town up in New England that is great for families. A place that's green in summer, full of flowers and shady trees. It's a place that's full of history, and it has a future too. It's Ashland, Massachusetts, a town for me and you.
Welcome to Ashland's Chronicle.
Thank you.
My guest today is Cece Doucette. Old friend, brilliant woman, and always finding something new. And she has turned the town upside down, almost, with her discoveries or her research into microwaves, tiny microwaves. I've forgotten exactly what the terminology is.
Well, we might call them EMFs, or electromagnetic fields of microwave radiation or radio frequency radiation. There's lots of different ways you can label it, but it basically comes down to all of our wireless technology came to market with no safety testing, and now we have a lot of science showing that it is biologically harmful. So the FCC set public access levels like way up here, and now the science is showing it's harmful way down here. So if people want to look into this, there's something called the Bioinitiative Report, and it's available out online. And there's another really good meta-analysis that Dr. Martin Paul did recently. It's called 5G, Great Risks for the European Union, the United States, and International Health. Compelling evidence for 8 distinct types of great harm caused by electromagnetic field exposures and the mechanisms that cause them. Because before, the industry used to say, well, there's no mechanism of harm identified, but now we do understand that a lot better, and it's documented in the independent, non-industry funded scientific literature. And if you want, I can tell you 8 ways that the science is showing it's harming us. You want to hear it?
Yeah, well, before you go on, we've been exposed to electromagnetic fields from way, way, way back to when I was actually an infant. And that's when broadcasting started.
Okay, now I have to stop you there because Martin is such a dear man, and when he says when he was an infant, that was 95 years ago. So can I say how much I love you for being here today and for just being such an inspiration to us all, because there's nothing that stops you. You just get up every day and lead a fulfilling life, and you are my hero. So thank you for having me here today.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. But what I wanted to point out was way back then, we were dealing with low frequencies.
Yeah,
really
ELFs.
Very low.
Yeah, extremely low frequencies.
And now we get up into the, way up into the impossible frequency.
Right. And that spectrum goes all the way from the ELFs, the extremely low frequencies, into the microwave area, or the non-thermal, non-ionizing level, and then it goes up to the ionizing end of things, where, if you go to the doctors or the dentist and you do x-rays, they protect you from that radiation with collars and, aprons and stuff. So we know at the ELF level, the science has shown that in big doses, that can be biologically hazardous too. And we know really well to stay away from those X-ray frequencies and the sun, because we wouldn't leave our children out in the sun all day unprotected, right? We know about that. So whatever made us think that the parts in the middle of that spectrum are safe? They're not, and that's what the science is telling us. And it's saying that these low-level, non-thermal, non-ionizing pulses of microwave radiation are hitting our cells, and they are attacking our nervous system, including our brains, leading to widespread neurological and neuropsychiatric effects. It's attacking our endocrine, our hormonal systems. It is producing oxidative stress and free radical damage, and those have critical roles in all chronic diseases. It attacks the very DNA of our cells, producing single-strand and double-strand breaks. It produces elevated levels of apoptosis, and I had to stop and ask what that was, but that's programmed cell death. So it is contributing to cell death. And it's causing lower male and female fertility, lower sex hormones, lower libido, and increased levels of spontaneous abortion, and it's attacking the DNA in the sperm cells. It's also producing excessive intracellular calcium and excessive calcium signaling, and that's really important because we are electrical beings, and those calcium signals are what are helping to regulate all of our systems, and this constant pulse of microwave radiation is disrupting that. And we now know through our own government finally put out a $30 million study that they've been doing for a couple of decades. It's the U.S. National Toxicology Program, which is part of the National Institutes of Health and Environmental Sciences. They went in expecting to prove a couple decades ago that cell phones are safe. And now that they've completed it, they reported it, they did an unprecedented 3-day peer review with worldwide experts, and then on November 1st, they issued their final report, and they found clear evidence of tumors in the hearts of male rats. And some people say, yeah, but those are rats. They choose these rats because we know biologically what happens to their cells happens to us. Clear evidence of cancer is the highest public warning they can give. They also found evidence of brain tumors, DNA damage, adrenal gland tumors. So we don't need more science. We need to get this information out to the public and teach safe technology strategies.
Fantastic.
So that's what we've done to ourselves.
Well, what you did by a roundabout way is finish what I was saying. In the old days, we just had low frequency, and we didn't realize, had no way to realize, that as we went way up into what I call the impossible.
Yeah, we did
frequencies.
We made the impossible possible, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But some of the things that happen is, so when you were working on radio systems back in your engineering days, those were ELFs, or extremely low frequencies, and that, if I understand, and I'm not an engineer, but my understanding is that those were rolling continuous sine waves that data was being carried on, right?
Yeah.
So when we have something that's smooth and continuous like that, our bodies can figure out a way to acclimate, unless we're like right under the broadcast tower, and then the dose becomes too great for us. But by and large, those radio signals were not that harmful to us. But what we did with digital technology is we added onto that rolling smooth wave a digital wave, and it's a pulsed, spiked, erratic square wave that goes on, off, on, off, on, off at billions of cycles a second. And it's that constant doing this to our cells that is causing the damage. So that's what's changed. And if we look at some of the things that many of us experience today that our doctors can't figure out yet, this is a wonderful diagram done by a nonprofit called We Are the Evidence, of people who have become electrically sensitive. And on that, it outlines areas of the body where the science shows why people are having these symptoms from radio frequency or EMF exposure. In the brain, a lot of people can't sleep right anymore because that constant man-made light, this microwave radiation, is pulsing all night long. So our brain doesn't release melatonin to regulate our sleep cycle or to go in and clean out the toxins of the day. That's what melatonin helps to do. So sleep is becoming a huge problem for children and adults alike. Headaches, these searing, stabbing headaches that the doctors can't figure out, well, turn off all the wireless and you would be very surprised to see that your symptoms might go down fast. Dizziness, concentration, because it impairs our cognitive ability, brain fog, fatigue, memory, and then the ears. With microwave sickness, tinnitus is one of the symptoms that a lot of people get. All of a sudden their ears start ringing and it gets louder, and it might be overpowering other sounds in your environment. People have no idea where that's coming from. And then you might become sensitive to all the noises around you because it's really doing a number on your hearing system. The skin, we have little antennas all throughout our skin. That's our largest organ, and those little antennas are impacted by the frequency. And so now you have people getting tingling. Some people, when they put the phone up to their head, they feel heat, they feel tingling, they get skin rashes. There's a gentleman in Framingham who first figured out what was going on because he had the cell phone in his pocket and the nerves in his legs started going jiggity. And once he figured it out, he just kept his cell phone in airplane mode and never used it on his body in active mode, and those symptoms went away. But we see so many children and young adults and older adults who are having social and emotional issues, anxiety, anger, depression, suicidal ideation. And it's because this constant pulse of microwave radiation is particularly harmful to the central nervous system. And so we have children being hospitalized for all this social emotional stuff that is off the charts now. And we're not listening to the scientists. We keep finding people who say, yeah, but look, in Fortune magazine or in Forbes magazine or in Times magazine or in the New York Times, look, they're all saying this is great. Well, I'm sorry, those are not the independent scientists who are experts in microwave radiation. Those are people whose incomes are tied to the industry, either through direct advertising revenue, or the New York Times is now partnering with the industry to put a 5G lab inside the New York Times. So you have to get to the real science to figure out what's going on. And that's what I did. I looked at those sperm studies that show you put a laptop near male human sperm and it changes the DNA, slows the motility, and causes far fewer sperm to be viable in just 4 hours of exposure. So that's what got me on my feet, was listening to that. But, you know, with the eye, we don't have any shielding for our eyes, right? So that can cause pressure in or behind the eyes, eye twitching, deteriorating vision. It can cause cataracts, troubles with the retina, with the heart, irregular heartbeats, palpitating too fast or too slow, arrhythmia, chest pain, pressure, difficulty breathing, high and low blood pressures. We know scientifically that this radiation can cause that. Other problems are adrenal, digestive, weight loss or gain. Diabetes is tying into this too. Dehydration, hair loss, and some people just feel like they've got the flu because their poor little bodies are starting to crash. So we don't need much more science on this. What we need is to get the existing peer-reviewed published science out to the public. So if people choose to turn this stuff off, like when I first learned, I circled my tail for a few months because I just simply couldn't believe that this was actually what the science was showing. But like those decked cordless phones at home that we all converted over to, you know, we took off the corded phones and we put those wireless phones all over our house. Turns out that's like having a cell tower right inside your house. So is the router, so is the wireless baby monitor, so is the Bluetooth, the soundboards, the wireless gaming devices, wireless keyboard, wireless mouse, laptops, all of it pulsing radiation at us, and especially the router, which, you know, now they're putting public hotspots with Comcast Xfinity to throw signal all the way outside to the curb so anybody going by can grab onto your signal, which, by the way, is using your electricity that you're paying for at home to provide them with public hotspots for their customers. So this is just wrong on many levels. But in my house, after I stopped circling my tail, I put back in my landlines, right? I found my old trim line with the long curly cord on it. That's what's back in my kitchen, so I can talk and cook and do what I need to do. I hardwired my mouse and keyboard again. I hardwired my computer, my printer, my kids' equipment, and I have a perfectly safe house. And I check it, though, because every now and then, little antennas can slip in there. Like my daughter came home from college one day and said she needed to print something wirelessly. I said, okay, just be sure and turn it off when you're done. And she did. The little light on the front of my printer was not glowing with a little icon for Wi-Fi, but I sensed that something was up. So I turned on my Acoustic Meter. This is about a $400 device. I turned it on, and sure enough, my printer was off the charts again. I'm like, well, what the heck? So I looked it up online, and it turns out there were 2 antennas in that printer, and both of them were not turned off. Just the one that lit up the front thing on the printer was off. So this is one of those invisible toxins like gas, until they put a fragrance in it so that we could smell natural gas, or carbon monoxide. We can't smell that or see it or hear it or taste it, but if it builds up enough, it's sure enough going to kill us, right? So this Acoustic Meter allows us to see, and see how it jumps around like that?
Yeah.
That's that spike of radiation pulsing up and down like this. And although we may not hear it or visibly feel it, our cells feel it. So Ashland Public Library in Massachusetts is the first in the nation to put one of these on loan. And anybody can take this out for a week with an Ashland Library card. I was fortunate to get a grant from the Board of Selectmen here, and the library trustees voted this in, and we have become the first in the nation to put one in circulation for anybody to take home and just walk around and see. Do you have exposure? If so, how much exposure? And Ashland Cable, where we are today, was very kind to send resources to my house, and we did a 23-minute PSA, or public service announcement, that shows what typical exposures look like. What should you look for in your house? And once you find them, what can you do? So all you have to do is get an Ethernet cable like we used 10 years ago, right? Plug it into the back of your router, run it. You can get longer ones. Run it to your devices. You can even get a little splitter box so you can plug a lot of different things in at once. And then just plug it into your devices. And my daughter had an iPhone, so I hardwired her laptop, no problem. It had a direct jack. But then she got an iPhone and was sitting there doing homework in high school for hours at a time, texting back and forth with her friends. And I thought, well, that can't be good. So I figured out that you can get a little adapter for like $30. This is called the Lightning to RJ45 Ethernet LAN Network Adapter, and it works for the iPhone and the iPad. So I brought it home, and I asked my daughter to hook it up. She's 15 at the time, impressionable. She doesn't really want to hear about this because all her friends are using this stuff. So I said, come on, plug it in, let's see what it does. So she plugs it in, and then you have to go into the device and manually turn off all those antennas, because an iPhone, for example, has a cell antenna and a data antenna, a Bluetooth antenna, a locator antenna, a Wi-Fi antenna, and again, one of those public hotspots. So you just turn all those off, and I said, now do something, and she says, oh my gosh, it's so much faster. And that's another little dirty secret of the industry, is they've sold us on all Wi-Fi all the time, but it's crummy technology. You plug back into a cable, your signals fly faster, the signal's far more reliable, your data is much more secure, and you're not radiating yourself with microwave radiation. So I could see the wheels turning, and then she said, so if I'm hardwired and I've turned off those antennas, does that mean it's not eating into my data plan? And I said, that's right, because if she goes over budget, we make her pay out of pocket. So that's what convinced my 15-year-old at the time to use a hardwired connection. But a lot of the other phones, the Androids, you can go online and find an adapter. You just need to make sure that your particular device works with whatever adapter. Here's one, for example, it's called Pluggable, and on their website, people will say, yeah, it worked for my phone, or it didn't work for my phone. So don't buy anything unless you're sure it's going to work. So there are solutions. This Thunderbolt to Gigabit Ethernet adapter is what my daughters use for their MacBooks. So solutions abound, but people simply don't even know that they should be taking precautions.
You've done fantastically well.
Thank you.
And Radio Shack, I don't know if it's still a business or not.
I know, they left Ashland.
They did, okay. I was going to say.
Yeah. But you can go up to any of the tech stores. You can go into Best Buy and stuff. You can go to the Apple store. You can order them online. They're all there. But I'd like to mention one other thing that we all need to start tuning into, and that's 5G or fifth generation technology. So the spectrum that carries all of our 3G and 4G, that just means generation. The waves that are carrying all those signals right now back and forth have been maxed out pretty much. There's no new revenue to be generated on that. All that's left are these tiny little millimeter waves, and the industry is spinning it that you'll have faster speeds, you'll have self-driving cars, you'll have smart cities, so let's get 5G in as fast as we can. We'll have the Internet of Things, and you can be in Italy, and you can, change the heat settings in your home here in Ashland, and, whatever. But what they're not telling us is the dark side of that. So those tiny little millimeters can carry vast quantities of data, but that doesn't mean that the 3G and 4G cell towers that are all over the place are going away. They have to use those too, because these little waves don't go very far and they don't go through buildings like the existing technology does. So they want to layer on more radiation, more radio frequency antennas. So the industry's solution is to put cell tower antennas everywhere. That means every 2 to 12 houses inside our neighborhoods. And if they're not putting them directly on poles outside your bedroom, and this, mind you, this is not 300 feet in an industrial park somewhere on the edge of town, inside our neighborhoods at street level poles. And if you don't have poles in your neighborhood, they're now going to start asking private homeowners to put a small cell antenna on their roof so that it can blanket the entire neighborhood. And they'll give you a kickback for it. They'll give you a rental fee. So people are going to think, oh my gosh, this is great. I'm going to be, the hip one in the neighborhood. I'm going to have the fastest speeds. But meanwhile, what they're doing is radiating themselves, their loved ones, and everybody in the vicinity on either side and up and down the street. So they are up at the federal level trying to push legislation through right now that would not only allow them to ask private residents to put these things on their house without any kind of a public hearing, so that neighbors would be aware and so that they would have a choice. And they're also trying to take away local control from our municipalities to say if or where we want this technology. But there are solutions. This policy book out of Washington, D.C. is with the National Institute for Science, Law, and Public Policy. It's called Reinventing Wires. We should not be putting any more wireless infrastructure in our communities now that our own government is telling us it causes cancer and DNA damage. We should be insisting that they bring hardwired connections to the premises. It's not good enough to just put fiber optics down the road, because if they bring that into your road, then what's going to happen is the wireless companies are going to come and pop up these wireless nodes all up and down your streets, and now you're going to be completely blanketed 24/7 in toxic microwave radiation. So I know it's a lot for people to get their heads around, but if we don't at least take the time to examine it right now and then choose whether you're going to speak up about it, we are facing what our world's leading scientists are calling the biggest public health crisis that we've ever seen. And already Brussels has backed out of 5G, right?
Who backed
Geneva,
out?
Brussels, and Geneva are halting 5G. Rome is halting 5G. So it's not like we have to reinvent the wheel here, but here in America, where we have so many of these industry companies, we don't get this through mainstream media because telecom companies own outright many of our mainstream media outlets, or their advertising revenue is so strong that our networks can't afford to bite the hands that feed them. But this information is all out there. So people can go to my website, which is Understanding EMFs. It's a simple Google research repository, no bells or whistles. You can go, if you want a crash course, go to a little nonprofit called wirelesseducation.org. We've distilled it into a half-hour course. You can take it for literally less than the cost of a movie ticket that just helps us to pay our nonprofit overhead. But go to Wireless Education. Go out to my YouTube channel. We did an expert forum here called Questioning the Safety of Our Children's Exposure to Radiation in Schools, because Ashland Public Schools has become the first in the nation to even have a sign hanging to say, turn this stuff off as a first step when we're not using it. So, and the Department of Public Health drafted an EMF fact sheet It was supposed to come out in 3 months. It's now been 2.5 years and has yet to see the light of day. And we lead the nation with 19 bills. We just had a public health hearing this week. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So don't be intimidated, but do study it and then make your personal choices and then speak up in your community and help to educate your local municipal leaders, because many of them don't even know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Please.
And this is mainly for the engineers.
Okay.
You've got to remember that what we did at low frequencies does not apply at the high end.
That's right. That's right. And the FCC that set those public radiation limits did so based on IEEE engineering standards, not biological science and medicine standards. So we have never had a health safety analysis of this by the folks who set those levels. And now we know scientifically it's carcinogenic. And there's even been IEEE articles about this, that they recognize the biological effects. So, but we have to get public policy in line with the science. And as we know, public policy can take decades, and in the meantime, we are the ones paying the price, and especially our children. So don't wait for public policy. We're working on it, but change what you can change today and use technology safely.
Amen. It really does. It really does boil down to it's almost a religion.
Yeah. And I never figured that I would be engaged in this at all, and this is way out of my comfort zone, but I ran campaigns for Ashland Public Schools in the Education Foundation, and then as a district grant coordinator, I brought a lot of this wireless in. And now that we know it's biologically harming our children, we can't stop till we get this fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Thank you, Martin.
And I don't know how to commend you enough.
Well, just use your voice and, just do what you do and use the channels that you have, and we should all start from where we are and make the changes from there. So I'm very grateful that you had me on today.
Thank you, and thank you for being on. We're about to finish, and you're one of my best guests.
Well, you're one of my favorite shows.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're going to have to get the Education Foundation in on this too.
I would love it if you would talk to them, and I
Yeah.
can come in and educate if you can set that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we brought that technology in. I know we could work on campaigns to get enough of our classrooms hardwired that we could still access the technology we need, and then step back and say, okay, the science is showing that children don't learn best from being in front of a screen. So let's scale back and see where is it really effective versus learning from an actual teacher, right?
Right.
So we've been on the Wi-Fi honeymoon. We need to bring it back to the center and have safe, appropriate technology.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
There's a town up in New England that is great for families. A place that's green in summer, full of flowers and shady trees. It's a place that's full of history, and it has a future too. It's Ashland, Massachusetts, a town for me and you. For sports we have the Clockers, our super homegrown team. Our culture, summer concerts, free music,